Firstly, tell me about the moustache. Why? How? When?
Early in lockdown, one of my biggest one of my biggest inspirations is a guy who used to play for Scotland. His name's James Hamilton, and he grew this, and I saw it on social media one day, and I said, I'm having a bit of that.
Did you see it, or did your wife see it and say, I reckon you'd look good at that?
She said it, and she said, do it, or I'm taking the daughter, packing the bags and leaving. I said, as long as you take the daughter, you can go. Phone rings, Jim Hamilton, on a Friday morning. I'm like, here we go. What's he got for me? Kavey, can you come on a podcast, do an interview, whatever it is? Yeah, no worries, Jim. When are you thinking? 3 minutes. So what I want to know, how far down the list was it?
No, mate. So I went down the list of Ulster men early in the week. Madigan, Cooney, then Billy Burns. Billy nearly did it. So Billy Burns said, mate, I'm keen. But they're on blackout, mate, at Ulster. They're not allowed. They're on social media blackout. So we went down the line again today. We went for Ferris, went for Bernard Jackman, Sean Holly. None of them could do it. I thought, I'll tell you what, it's time to bring in the police, mate. Let's bring in Kavey. It wasn't really. So, it wasn't really.
If there's one guy, right, if you Google lose a knockout game of rugby to Leinster, I'm pretty sure I'll come up. That's probably what you did.
That's exactly what I did. Let's go back a week. Did you think Ulster would beat Edinburgh?
Did I think? I didn't think they would. I knew they could. The selections, like when I saw the Ulster team on paper before the game, I actually thought to myself, it wasn't like a scary Ulster team. I'm not a mad fan of the big horse at fullback. So I was kind of looking. I felt prior to these games that they were going to miss Luke Marshall at 13. James Hume's been brilliant. I just didn't think it looked like a team that I thought was going to go to Edinburgh and win. But the use of the bench, to bring it's such a it is a 23-man game. It's a crap cliche you would have heard in match week. It's a 32-man game as we're on the pads, but it is. And when those subs came on, like Sean Reedy was brilliant in the back row, the two props, and a big credit to Dan McFarlane, the Ulster management, to make I haven't heard anything to say Louis Ludick or John Cooney were injured. So to make those swaps at half-time, that is huge. But Cooney has been the rock on which Ulster's been built on for the past couple of years. So to chuck him out, chuck Albie Matheson in, to make a positional change, put Mikey Lowry in, hasn't played a lot of rugby, was huge. And it really, really worked. So big credit.
How will Cooney be around being taken off at half-time? Because he got yanked off at half-time, you can say that. He didn't, because he's got the respect of Dan McFarlane, he's got the respect of the public and stuff like that, because he's been one of the standout players in Ireland. But stuff like that, how does it affect the dynamics? And then I suppose, Billy Burns as well being captain, but everything's around Madigan. I think I know the answer, but I think from someone who knows the players probably more so than me, how does that affect the kind of dynamics going into a final?
So the one thing I would say, I think it's what Ulster need. I don't think Ulster would have won that game 6 months ago, because I don't think they had the competition at halfback. I don't think they had the depth. So for the big picture, it's actually what they need. My own personal opinion, which I suppose is all I can give, is that I don't think there'll be that many question marks about the halfback selection this week. I think the gap, Madigan's an amazing signing, and I'm really excited to see what he can do and how far he can push Billy Burns. But for me, John Cooney and Billy Burns have far too much money in the bank over the past year to be making a rash decision like that. To sort of speak a little bit more about Billy, and we've had this conversation before, I think Billy is higher rated within the group than outside the group. So for me, when I saw Billy was captain, I wasn't really surprised. He is he's a big leader within the team, and I think he manages the game really, really well. He sort of steers Ulster around the place. He gets the ball in the sort of the likes of Stockdale. He gets the ball in their hands, and I think he's sort of far higher up the pecking order in terms of seniority, in terms of how good a player is within the group than he would be in the media or in the public.
I'm glad you said that, because I 100% agree. We can get carried away with Madigan, and we have been, and we are, because that, what he did when he came on was amazing, but probably more so his story over the last 18 months. So big shout out to Billy and a big shout out to Cooney as well. I think, Dan McFarlane's big on the psychology element, right? We were talking about it before the Edinburgh game, because he knows a lot of the Edinburgh players through coaching Scotland. So he had that kind of psychological insight potentially. But how does he deal with that? How will he be dealing with that against an unbeaten team like Leinster? Because again, from the outside looking in, it seems an impossible task. But, as the famous Superman once said, mate, impossible is nothing, or nothing is impossible, one of the other ones.
Something like that. I know what you mean anyway. I'm a bit down the line about it, because I think part of me thinks it's got to be a bit of old school, literally red hand on the jersey, proper, just the way I didn't play, but the proper old school Ulster rugby. And part of me thinks the group, they're a good rugby team as well, so they're not quite, it's not like they're so bad that they have to resort to blood and thunder. But I do think that is the path to disrupting Leinster, and I think it's what makes for an interesting recipe this weekend. You've got Leinster 9 of the last 11 finals. There's talk of squad rotation in a final. It's absolutely absurd. They haven't been beaten in about a year. It's literally, they all live within 15 minutes of the stadium. They play in the stadium 5-10 times a year. It's literally, it's just another day at the office for them. For Ulster, it's the complete opposite. You probably have a third of the starting team have been passed on by Leinster. Marty Moore, Jack McGrath, Geordie Murphy, John Cooney, Alan O'Connor is from Skerries in Leinster. There's probably a couple of missing. And these guys, obviously Madigan, these guys will have huge chips on their shoulder. Huge. Add into that the sort of perception in Ireland that Ulster are kind of beat Ulster and shut them up for a bit. That's what I would love to see from Ulster, and I hate to be old school and imply that Ulster aren't good enough technically and tactically to cause Leinster problems, but that's what I really want to see from them. Just absolute try and obliterate them, try and disrupt them in attack, and just try and break the whole thing down.
There's a lot of chat about Ross Byrne starting, that he's earned his final. If we go back, was it Europe last year where he played it? Ross Byrne played in the semi-final of Europe, and then Sexton played in the final. What can he bring to the table? Not that Sexton can't, but that will maybe benefit Leinster.
My perception of him is that he's just a far more. I am a big fan of him. I think he's brilliant. I just think there's still a big gap, and I think back to the quarterfinal of Europe last year when we played Leinster at the Aviva, and Sexton wasn't playing. And I just felt that made a big difference. I think Ross Byrne's really, really solid. He's got a really good kicking game, and I think he can steer the ship right nicely. But I just don't think he does it to the level that Sexton does it. And I just feel Sexton could make a bit of a mockery of Ulster's of sort of positionally the back three. So that's the reason I would really like to see him not play. And you think of him sort of hitting the midfield and sweeping black to the blind side and bringing wingers forward and poking the ball through, and I just have it in my head that if he gets an armchair ride, he's going to torture them.
Probably with a preview as well to Saracens around Leinster as well. Where and what and how is this kicking game come about, right? Because I don't know what the stats are for Leinster kicking, but it's ridiculous. And when we talk about kicking, back when we played in the glory days, what coffee is that, by the way?
It's a nice Guilt Trip coffee.
Of course it is.
You may have heard of it. If not, check it out on Instagram.
What is it? Guilt Trip?
Guilt Trip Coffee and Donuts. Check it out on Instagram, flipping Facebook, website, you name it.
And that marketing is ideal as we go into a big part of the Leinster, because box kicking when I was at Sarries, right, that was a big part of it, and people were bored by that, but there's clearly a foundation and a structure around that for the success. A lot of it stemmed from defence and the kicking game. But Leinster have brought this attacking kick. You mentioned Byrne's kicking game. You mentioned Sexton's one a couple of weeks ago or in the quarter-final. But these cross-field kicks that they're doing, their ability to find space. As a player that played 13 via the bench sometimes, but how do you deal with that? Like, I mean, genuinely, how do Ulster, but how do a Saracens deal with them being able to have the ability to carry ball into contact, to play with width, to hit, some world-class wingers, up and unders ability that they've got, but these kind of crossfield and little grubbers and stuff through.
My last couple of years at Ulster, they always used to talk about like kicking from a position of strength or kicking on your own terms, as opposed to, like, I think the first passage of the game last week, Ulster kept the ball for 7 or 8 phases, got smashed back a few times and then booted it in the air. What Leinster do really well is kick on their terms. So what you'll see, they might have a scrum on the right and they'll do a bit of a couple of decoys, get the ball to the edge, bring the fullback up a bit, and then Gary Ringrose will poke it through. And it kind of looks awkward, but it's so effective. And then maybe the blindside wingers covering across. He picks it out and he's under pressure from like a James Lowe and he slices it out, and you got like a 30-40 meter gain from nothing. They're very, very good at plays like that. And yeah, I don't know. They do seem to be ahead of the 8 ball. I know Murray Kinsella, who absolutely loves his rugby, he did a wee piece after the Munster-Leinster game, and it was about that kicking from, and it was just showing how Munster kind of hoofed the ball all day. And I think if you look at the stats, they'd actually kicked the ball a similar amount of times. It was just that Leinster had done it very, very effectively and on their own terms, and that's something that they're just very, they're very. I just think there's a wee bit more thought into it. For those out there who love the rugby, like I think they at the weekend was one of the games that might have been the Munster game. They had a right hand scrum and they put their blindside winger, just sent him down the short side, and that'll drag the opposition, the Munster, back 3 across. But then it went left and Johnny Sexton sort of crossfielded left, and that puts the back 3 on such a out of sync, because if you have the open side winger up in the line, the fullback across, and this winger going this way, and then when the Leinster winger shoots down the short side, 2 of them adjust back, but the open side winger might not adjust back, and suddenly there's space. It's just a little bit more thought on it, and they do it really, really well. And I don't think it's a big area of strength for Ulster's game, whoever plays in that back 3.
And then it brings me on then, because we've gone into a bit of detail and I'm conscious that we need to get ready for the final. I'm going to trim my beard. I'm wearing a shirt, believe it or not.
Are you wearing a tie?
I don't know. I'll bring one.
Pointy shoes?
No, man. What pointy shoes? Have you seen my toes? I was rugby training last night. I don't know if you saw, mate.
I saw the Lions were tweeting you. So,
I mean, you've just got to believe, KV. And you know,
I'm leaving the Mo. I'm getting my hair cut in the morning. Not too short though, Jim, because you know, don't you?
I don't know. I've got this magic dust, which is amazing. So we're going to look sharp as anything. Right. So game day. Who's going to win? I don't know why I'm pausing.
Who's going to win? So listen, I think it's hard to see anyone beating Leinster, isn't it? They haven't lost in a year. I see no reason really why, other than am I too proud to say Ulster are going to lose? So I'm going to say Leinster, but I do think Ulster have a chance. I think the European quarterfinals the next week are going to play into it as well. I think Leinster could rotate their team. I think that Saracens game is bigger for Leinster than this week. Ulster are playing Toulouse next week. I think Ulster would happily win this week and then send the academy to, like, this. Ulster want the trophy right now. As I say, not to get old school, but what I really, really want to see for them is just go there and try and mutilate a few boys, get off the line, knock a few boys over, try and disrupt them. Because I do feel if you sit back and stay connected, you'll lose.
Just stand up. For the
Ulstermen. Me and you will be doing it anyway. So mate, I don't know how many thousands will be doing it.
And then lastly, KV, mate, there's a rival podcast. We're launching our own podcast at RugbyPass soon as well, which will be another rival. But just give us a little bit of insight into your new one and the millions of listeners and viewers that you get.
Well, I felt like I was probably one of the only former players in the UK and Ireland that wasn't on a podcast like every week. And I just felt there was there's just, the market wasn't saturated enough, Jim. I was like, you know what the world needs right now? Another podcast. But no, yeah. So myself, John Barkley, as you know very well, and Hookie, James Hook. So we're doing the late hit now. So I think we're up to about 150 followers on Instagram, so that'll be 155 now.
I'm enjoying it, mate. I'm enjoying the podcast. John's really energetic.
For a Scottish person.
Hey, standard, mate. Just bring any Scotsman, mate. He's enjoying it, I think. I enjoyed it.
Do you know what I think with John and Hookie? I think it takes a while to get out of the stock answers.
Mm.
You know, like a year ago, he's answering questions as Scotland captain. So it takes a while to get out of the routine of Jordan being like, do you know what I mean? Just giving they're physical and... Yeah,
of course, all that stuff. The stuff that people don't want to hear.
So listen, it's going all right. We'll see how it goes. And sure, if it goes to tits up, I'll come crawling back and try and get a few slots with you boys.
You're in, mate. Well, stand up for the Ulster men and all that. I can't wait for the weekend, KV. And, mate, Ruggers is back properly.